Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, folks. We are very thankful to be able to record for you guys because if you were listening to the end of last month's episode, I was sharing that recording might be spotty.
Might be.
I
really thought it was
few
funny.
months.
Yeah.
Which it still could be, but at least we're getting a monthly episode out for February, which feels great.
Thumbs up. Go us.
Thumbs up for us. And we're being really creative and flexible in how we're doing it. So I'm just going to get the disclaimers out of the way right now, which is that we are not recording at our normal time of day. I am recording at my house downstairs in a much larger room. I've recorded here a couple times before, but normally this is not the space that I'm in when I'm recording. And I'm definitely not at home by myself. I've got my husband upstairs. I got my kids upstairs who should hopefully be asleep. I've got my mother-in-law. Like, you guys are just going to probably hear more background noise.
Yeah. And I've got a husband and a goose.
Editing efforts. Yeah, exactly. You have a husband and a goose, you got the dog. Like we've got things going on, but we're here, which is a really good thing. So we're happy about that. I realized too, just because
perfectly imperfect. There you go, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've been looking forward to this today because again, it's just been a thing in my routine that I've been missing. Was not recording and not doing, normally we record on Mondays.
Yeah.
And I've just been like, my Mondays are so off. I miss my regular Mondays. So it feels like a bit of normalcy, even if we are in very different, under very different circumstances. Yeah. Yep, exactly. I also thought I might share because, the reason why things are so thrown out of whack for us with our recording schedule and routine is the fact that my childcare is out of whack on Mondays because my mom is currently undergoing chemotherapy for breast cancer, like I shared at the end of the last episode. So I thought I might give just a brief update on that, which is that she recently completed her second round of chemo out of 4. And so far she's had a better experience this round just because she knew a little more what to expect and everything. She's going through all the usual stuff. Her hair is definitely falling out. She's got like bone pain and total lack of appetite, and she's got some of those things going on, but she's hanging in there in case anybody was like wondering about that, since it was a thing that I mentioned. And it's just been a big part of my everyday brain space is, thinking about her and connecting with her and seeing how she's doing. And of course, I know she's not the only one out there. I know there may be direct listeners who are going through cancer treatments right now, or listeners who have loved ones like I do who are going through cancer treatments. So thankfully in my world, it's going okay. So that's a good update.
But we're going to switch gears now and move into something much more uplifting than cancer.
So much more uplifting than cancer. I mean, really, Michelle, that is a very low bar.
That's true. I think just about anything's more uplifting than cancer.
I think stubbing my toe is more uplifting than cancer.
I would agree with you.
So yes, definitely transitioning into something more uplifting than cancer, to put it mildly. No, actually it's something explicitly uplifting. So not just out of the negative, but into the positive. Michelle and I have been trying out this new... Yes, I don't know. Say new product. Anyway, that also sounds so weird to say. No, anyway, this new drink, I guess technically, is called Magic Mind. They describe it as a mental performance shot, which is accurate and also sounds a little silly to me. But I get it, right? The whole point of it is that you're supposed to throw it in your daily routine somewhere, and it helps be either a replacement for caffeine, or you can sometimes put it along your caffeine if you don't want to have that caffeine crash at the end of the day. Admittedly, my brain is not the best brain for it. I am on about the max dose of Adderall they allow a person to take every day, and it has a subtle effect. You basically have to beat me over the head with drugs before my body notices anything. But there were other things that I really appreciated about the drink itself and also about the company. They are working, they are 100% carbon neutral. They donate to mental health causes. And it's not just this, energy drink beat you upside the head with caffeine that leaves you shaking and then leaves you sleepy 5 hours later if you're a normal brain. And that happens when you consume
I was going to say, I'm like raising my hand over here. I'm like, I'm a normal brain.
That's me. Exactly. So, Michelle, normal brain. Talk about how it's been for your lovely normal brain. Not the brain that chugs coffee really and takes a nap.
Yeah, exactly. No, when they reached out to us and they were like, hey, we have some samples we can send you. You want to give this a try and tell us what you think. I didn't even know that this was like a thing that existed and that this was what I've been needing, because tired mom of 2 young kids over here where I am not sleeping more than 5 hours a night. I need something to pick up my energy, but I hate coffee. I don't want to drink that stuff. I like drinking tea a lot, but a lot of tea that I happen to find doesn't have caffeine in it, or it just takes a while to like get the water heated up and then sip on the tea and like
the whole ritual of it, Michelle.
I love the ritual, except for when I'm busy as hell, which is all
forever.
The time these days.
Yep.
Yep. And when they say a mental performance shot, they literally mean a shot. It is this cute little tiny bottle that is only 2 ounces, so it is extremely quick to drink. My preference is not to actually like take it back like a
slam
shot.
it.
You can do that.
True.
I like to sip on it, but even when I'm sipping on it, like I took some, like I did some today. I did some. However I want to put it. This afternoon when I was on my lunch, and I only had like 30 minutes for lunch, and it was super easy to just fit it in with the rest of my meal. And then it really did pick up my energy a little bit this afternoon, because that's when I need my energy pick me up. Is after lunch, before the end of my day, I need a boost to keep me going. So it's actually been really helpful. I've really enjoyed using it.
Nice. Yeah, the folks that I shared it with who had brains more like yours had reported similar impacts.
Yeah. No, awesome. So basically, Kate and I liked this so much, and we wanted to share it with all of you so that you can look into it and see if it's something that would be helpful for you, that we have a code that you can use on their website that will get you a little bit of a discount. Yeah, which is great. So this limited time offer that you can use now, what it will get you is 48% off your first subscription, and it will also get you off 20% off a one-time purchase. And the code is DBT20. You can use that when you check out. And we're going to put the link in the show notes so that you can just go and click on that. But you can claim it at magicmind.com/DBT20.
I feel like we're real kids now, Michelle.
We are. Isn't it great?
It is. It's great. Anyway.
All right. To actually get into what the topic is for today's episode, I feel like this came up somewhere through some kind of listener saying something to us that inspired me to think about this topic. But honestly,
so
this
vague.
comes up it's so vague. I know, right? And this stuff comes up all the time on Q&As, like some of the challenges we're going to be talking about today. We address them on Q&As pretty regularly. So a lot of this, what we're going to be talking about tonight, is really a summary of challenges that we hear people talk about all the time when it comes to actually using DBT. It's like you learn about it and then you go out into the world to use it. And it's like, oh shit, this is like way harder than I thought it would be. Or what often happens is that you might do a really great job of consistently using your skills when you're like fresh out of completing a DBT program and you're like, yeah, I've got this. DBT is great. And then fast forward a year later and you are not really using DBT very much anymore. Or you're using it, but it just feels really stale and you're not as into it as you once were. And I think that honestly is what brings a lot of people to our podcast. It's people who have a history with DBT, they know DBT, but they've fallen away from it. And now they're wanting to get back into it and get a refresher. So they find resources like our podcast to help with, as we're putting it, keeping DBT fresh, right? How do you consistently use DBT in a way that's actually going to be sustainable? So that's what we're going to be talking about. But before we get that ball rolling, let's do promotional stuff.
Woohoo!
All right. So first thing, because it's our favorite thing, is mentioning the book. If you haven't gotten the book yet, you can go ahead and do so at any time. It is there waiting for you in all the formats and ways
It's true
that it can be waiting for you. Ebook, audiobook, paperback book. It's all there. So DBT for everyone. You can search for it on Amazon. You can search for it like through Barnes & Noble. Someone actually posted something, I forgot to tell you, Kate, in the Facebook group recently that was really nice. Yeah, they said something like, I'd give the book like 5 stars. It was like a really great supplement to the podcast or something, which was very nice to hear. So get your hands on the book if you haven't already. We'd also love to get new patrons. So if you want a pre and ongoing support for the podcast, you can become a patron. You can also go to our Etsy shop and buy DBT related hoodies and mugs that we have for sale there. Also, if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a rating or write us a review there. You can also rate us on Spotify if that's where you're listening. They have a way to do that too, which is cool. And if you have any questions about anything or you have topic ideas for a future episode, like last month's episode, that was definitely a listener suggested topic that we had no idea about until the listener suggested it. So if you have ideas, things you've wondered about that you think would be good for us to talk about in a monthly episode, you can email us at dbtandmepodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out our other podcast if you're not already listening, which is The Couch and the Chair. We are also due for putting out a new episode for that, I'm realizing.
Oh, gosh.
Ideally in the month of February.
Okay.
But that one may be delayed.
Oh, dear. That's fair.
But we put out episodes periodically over there, too. So that could be fun. And the links for Patreon, Etsy, all that stuff, that's in the show notes. So you can just scroll on down and find the links there for those things. Okay, so I think we're actually ready to dive in. So the way we're going to format it today is that basically we have 4 different challenges that we're going to talk about. So 4 different reasons why you might be struggling to keep up your DBT practice. And then we each came up with ideas for each of the 4 challenges for what we think can be done to combat that. I think the big disclaimer here, I mean, maybe we've been talking about some DBT skills somewhere, but this is definitely not an episode where we're actually talking about any DBT skills.
Not very many of them.
We're assuming if you're listening to this, this particular episode, that you have an awareness at least of what some of the skills are. We're really just going to be talking about different strategies and different things that you can do to actually be using the skills. But there's not going to be a whole lot of skill explanation or anything like that.
No, that's fair.
So.
I might reference a couple, but I'm not going to be explaining them much.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Okay.
All right.
You get to start, Kate, with the first challenge.
Awesome. To challenge number 1, probably, Jesus Christ. Sorry, then the cats are doing loud things. This is hilarious, guys. This is just the night. Okay. I like this one, Michelle's always saying, because this is probably the one that I've struggled with the most until recent years, when now DBT is tattooed on my fucking bones, and I think about it all the time. But before that, you know, in my span when I was 19 years old and went through it, and then after that, this was my biggest challenge. So, not thinking about DBT. You know what the skills are, maybe have previously used them consistently, but now DBT is an afterthought in your life, and so you're rarely using the skills anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What to do about it, Michelle?
I know. I was thinking about what ideas to do about, because really, with this one, it's it's figuring out how to bring DBT from the background of your brain to the forefront of your brain. And that concept, right? I think we can have so many things that float in the background of our minds. And then it really is just figuring out whether it's about DBT skills or whether it's like, oh, I need to remember to, I don't know, do the dishes or like whatever it is. It's just how do I bring it to a place where it will actually be something that feels more front and center for me to remember and recall to do it. But one way I was thinking that could be helpful with this, I am a big fan. I'm just going to start with that because it's going to probably come up throughout the episode today. I really, truly believe that people do not need to know all DBT skills. I love the idea of learning about them all, but then I want people to pick and choose. Because there are going to be skills that you don't probably need. They're just not going to be as relevant for you, your personality, or your particular life struggles or stressors. There's just some skills you don't need as much. And that's okay. It's okay to pick certain skills where you're like, I'm never going to think about this particular skill. It's just not the one for me. That's okay. But what I do want you to do is really get clarity on what skills you do want to be thinking about and remembering. Let the rest go. At least for now. You may decide after you've narrowed it down to your top few skills that you really want to focus on. And if you really get into a good place where you are consistently thinking about and using those skills, you might decide to add on a couple more. Cool. But because your challenge right now is that DBT is just not even really a thought in your brain space, as you're starting to bring it in more, I want you to be really clear on which skills you are setting your sights on to think about. So I want you to narrow it down to your top 1 to 3 skills that you think are most helpful for you. I don't care what skills they are. I don't care what modules they come from. Doesn't matter. Just pick your top 1 to 3. And then you need to do reminders. This is how I put it in the notes. Then you need to do reminders for those skills where you will actually remember to think about them and use them. Now, there's lots of ways we can do reminders. So this is just going to depend on you, what actually clicks in your brain. Like for me, I find the strategy of using timers to be helpful. There are certain things in my life that if I don't set a timer to do it, I'm not going to remember to do it. So for me, setting timers on a phone is really helpful. And this is something we'll recommend sometimes where, set a timer on your phone. And when the timer goes off, it's time to think about or do a thing, whatever it is. That could be a way to remind you. Some people love Post-its, having visual reminders up somewhere. Post-its on your bathroom mirror, Post-its by your front door when you're leaving for the day, Post-its on your fridge, like wherever places that you're going to see them consistently. Some people love those types of reminders. You can also take like screenshots on your phone. You just have to then remember to like go back and look at them, right? So give them a heart so that they don't get lost in the shuffle of all your other pictures and you can easily find them. But especially if you're wanting to remember a skill like, say, check the facts or pros and cons, or some of those skills that might be like a little more worksheet oriented or have multiple steps. It might be
the
honestly
flow chart
like
of
accepts
doom
or
for
improve.
opposite action. Sorry, I hate that flow chart.
Yeah, that flow chart is kind of intense. But it might be something like that you might want to like take a screenshot of so you can have the skill itself to really look back at and recall. If it's an intense acronym, that might be helpful. So I don't care what strategy you choose, and there may be a lot more that I'm not thinking of, but choose something that will start planting the seeds. Like with the Post-it idea, it can just be, just writing the skill. If you want to remember, check the facts, just write, check the facts. on a bunch of Post-its and put them up over your house so that you can just remember, oh yeah, that's a thing I could do from time to time. You can make the Post-its like more nuanced and interesting if you want to, but just make them about the skills so that you can recall using the skills. But here's the thing that will probably happen. You will likely start off with doing one of these reminders, and over time, it may get boring. Like for me with timers, I could definitely get prone to, like, after the timer has gone off, X number of days in a row for the same thing, then I just start snoozing it, right? I'm like, dismiss, whatever. Or again, the Post-it notes, you may get to the point where you don't really see them anymore because they've been up for weeks. So you're not seeing them anymore. So that's totally normal. That does not mean you're doing anything wrong. That does not mean you're failing. That's just how our brains work. When we've seen the same thing enough times and it doesn't seem different, then it starts to fade into the background again. So then you just need to change up the reminder. Make yourself some new Post-it notes. Put them in new locations. Set the timer for a different time of day. Make a commitment. Okay, I've noticed I've been snoozing the timer. I'm going to recommit to not snoozing it to remind myself to think about or do this skill or whatever it is. So setting reminders in whatever ways will be beneficial to you, I recommend doing that. The other strategy I recommend is that it can be helpful at the end of your day before you go to bed, like kind of last thing at the end of your day. Like I imagine like you're getting into bed, you're done with everything. Just think to yourself, did I use any skills today? And just think about it. Maybe it's one of your top skills. You can specifically ask yourself about those, right? Did I use X, Y, or Z skill today? Or you could just be like, did I use any DBT skills at all? Was I in my wise mind at any point today? Did I practice any mindfulness? Did I do some opposite action, right? Whatever it is. Did I use any skills? And just ask yourself the question. So it doesn't have to take really much time at all, just reflecting on it. And then you can also add on, do this in addition to asking yourself if you used any skills, or you can do this instead of asking about the day that you just had. You can, if you'd like to, set an intention with what skill you might want to use for the next day. So there can be a lot of power in doing things right before we go to bed, because then our brain goes into sleep mode and we are more likely to integrate information when we've done something closer to bed. So you might decide to just ask yourself, okay, what's my day looking like tomorrow? What do I have going on? Is there a skill I want to pick now before I go to bed to say, hey, tomorrow I want to use this skill? And set an intention around it. That can also be a helpful way to be keeping DBT consistently in your brain, is to make a routine of doing that at the end of your night. So, what about you, Kate? What are your ideas for this one?
You can see Goose's head in just a little bit he's right there. Yeah.
Oh, yep, there he is.
Yeah, there he is. Hi, villain. Anyway, he's doing this thing. Maybe other people's fur babies and or real skin children. Real skin children. Wow, could you have found a creepier way to describe babies, Kate? Jesus,
Human
fuck.
children?
Yes. Jesus. Sometimes my brain.
Human children.
Anyway, he's doing this thing where he's like, Mom's not paying attention to me. What if I deliberately misbehave in small ways right in front of her? This'll get Mom's attention. I'm like, stop. Anyway, guys. Here we are. All right, so my first one is to bring up your intentions in a safe or supportive relationship, or multiple safe, supportive relationships. Bringing it up can look like a lot of different things. One fun way to do this could be to try and teach other people about the skills. Pick a person, pick a partner, right? It could be a child, it could be a partner, a spouse, it could be a family member, it could be a coworker. Who fucking cares? If it's somebody that you feel safe doing it with, and try and teach them whatever skill or skills you're focusing on. I, by the way, am also a big proponent of Michelle's. You don't have to do all of them all the time. Jesus fuck. Or ever. You don't have to do all of them ever. Anyway, but so you can teach them to other people. You can tell other people, like, hey, I'm working on using this skill in these sorts of situations. If you see me sort of floundering, could you remind me about this skill by name, and give them the name to remind you of, or a code word to use to help you remember. You could tell people and just say, hey, I'm working on this skill in these sorts of situations. So if you see me pause, or if I say things a little weird or differently, that's me practicing the skill. Just sort of give me space and grace for working on it, or something like that, right? There's a lot of different ways that you might bring it up into a different relationship. If you're wanting to work it with Michelle's reflecting about things at the end of the day, you could check in with like an accountability buddy about it, who is also doing DBT or something else in their life that they're wanting to remember to do more consistently. Right. So there's a lot of different ways, but it can be a good reminder, and also just more motivating when we have an interpersonal connection connecting us to the skill use. So bringing it into a relationship or relationships can be really helpful. One thing that, amusingly, I put this one down because I've noticed it for myself right now. Finding one skill that would be incredibly helpful in your life every day right now and focus on it until reaching for it is second nature. Recently, for me, it's been actually amusingly check the facts. But whatever it is, right, there's probably something. I'd say for most of us, there's probably something that we could, bear to be doing a lot more of. Just consistently for some reason, because of our lives right now, right here. And because, if it's a situation that's cropping up consistently, you're more likely to remember to reach for that skill. If you're like, all right, I am dealing with X, Y, or Z problem. Every time I think about that, I want to use this skill. And just try and work for reaching it again and again and again. And because you have the motivation of the consistent, pressure from your world, it can help to reinforce and remind the skill use. Does that make sense, Michelle? I don't feel like did I describe that okay? Okay.
No, that totally makes sense. I was actually just thinking about it for myself. Like, what would my skill be?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
that I would find incredibly useful in my life. And I feel like you could view that one of two ways. Like, you could really, zoom in on something.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm dealing with a situation at work. So, like, I need this skill for this situation. But for me, the skill that immediately came to mind for me is willingness.
Oh, okay. I was wrong.
And that's, like, for me, like, zoomed out. Like, zoomed out, big picture, like, willingness. That's just, like, long-term DBT work for me that I'm going to need to continually come back to in all kinds of situations, is catching when I'm being willful and working towards being willing. It's like a big picture one for me. So I could imagine it looking either way for people. But yeah, just being able to think about, what's most useful.
Yeah.
For me.
Yep.
I like that.
And because it's most useful, it can help you remember to reach for it, basically, until it's really well ingrained. Good God, dog.
Yeah, totally.
So, I guessed, I don't know why I'm telling you, but for some reason I thought you were going to do accumulating positive, they say emotions because it's dumb and self-contradictory. Accumulating positive emotions in the long term. I don't know why, but that was the thing I thought you were going to go for.
Interesting. Yeah. I've been working on that with a client lately. I really like that one.
Yeah. Anyway, neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But
nice.
Beautiful. Your willingness is a beautiful segue. Segue. This is the problem with doing this at night, Michelle. I'm preparing for bed by now, usually. Anyway, it segues beautifully into the second challenge, which is yours.
Yeah, it does. So the second challenge is that sometimes we just get willful about using DBT. Where you just reach a point where you don't want to do it anymore. Like, you've been doing it consistently. Again, maybe it's a situation where you were in a group, the group ended, but you are like, you've continued, you've stuck with it, but you're just tired and over it. Like, you're doing a diary card, but you don't want to do your diary card anymore. You don't want to do mindfulness anymore. You don't want to do worksheets anymore. Like, you're just overdoing DBT and kind of feeling like just, burnt out and done with it. And it's all just started to feel like too much work and not fun at all anymore. Maybe it never did feel fun, but it's certainly not feeling fun now. And what to do then if that's what you're experiencing?
This is a great one, and I'm gonna actually start in reverse order of what I have in my notes, because I, and probably the listeners, are also all having to do some radical acceptance right now. Because Goose is tossing around some rubber toys and pawing at them on the ground, and it's happening while I'm talking, and so Malia can't do anything about it. So sorry, guys. Anyway, so, honestly though, I don't wanna, right? Like, I don't know if you didn't quite say it exactly with that much emphasis, but you put "I don't want to" so many times in the notes, right?
That's true, I did.
Right, and that's how I always talk about willfulness too, right? Is that "I don't want to" kind of attitude. And so what is like really the opposite of "I don't want to," right? It is radical acceptance, right? It is just being like, it's nice that I don't want to. That's all well and good that I don't want to. I need to, right? Like, right? It's all well and good that I have X, Y, or Z thing that's I could see as getting in the way, or as a hurdle, or as a reason, and still willingness looks like doing my fucking skills. Maybe not as much, though you'll get into that in a minute, so I'm going to shut the fuck up. But it is about just accepting that this is the state you're in, right? First of all, noticing that you're in willfulness, right? That's always the first step to radical acceptance, is noticing that you're not. And then taking steps towards how can I cultivate willingness and radical acceptance, really, towards the idea of doing my skills. And that's the only DBT bit I have in here. So, the other one I have, is just do it. This is a thing I was actually kind of well known for in community mental health when we worked together, Michelle. My clients, teasingly called it my Nike therapy. I guess just do it. But the whole point of this one is to, how do I phrase that? Anticipate your own answer to questions and override it. So, for instance, you might imagine it like you are the adult in charge of a small child who wants to go outside and play in the snow but does not want to put on a jacket. Like, that's nice, right? You can be kind and validating and present to the child's desires. Like, you know what? I hear you, kiddo. I don't like jackets either. They're incredibly confining. They restrict your movement. They're kind of stuffy. I get it. Also, you're putting on your jacket or you're not going outside, right? Like, that is just the way of the world. Like, this is just what's happening. You just have to do it. I don't have to be a dick about it. But I am, in fact, overriding your no, right? Like, I just know that there are times and places where, because we're in charge of, well, in this case, ourselves, we have to override some no's. So I talk about this a lot with depression, but it works for willfulness too, right? If you're sitting over here, I don't want to-ing your way around a bunch of skills, I'm guessing that you're probably asking yourself if you want to use them. Like, do I want to use a skill right now? And you're coming back with, no, I do not. And so then you're not. And then you're asking yourself again, do I want to? And you say, no, I do not. And so then you're not. At some point, you got to realize that the answer is just clearly no, you don't want to. And you need to anyway, right? And so you can be compassionate, you can be kind, you can be validating to yourself of all of the reasons why you don't want to. And with that same sort of compassionate override, eventually you just have to tell yourself, but I need to do it anyway, right? All of that protest is all well and good, totally valid, thumbs up me. I can be self-compassionate till the cows come home, and I still need to take part in these skills. I am definitely seeing this, I realized, Michelle, as I'm talking, more from the perspective of people who, shall we say, need the skills. I mean, I know we're like DBT for everyone, and I still totally agree with that, but I'm definitely thinking about this from frankly, my own perspective, which was somebody who needed them. And so, not doing it was not a good idea. And then my last thought, and man, I realize I put this in here, and it's a complicated idea that I'm not going to spend enough time explaining. But mindful self-compassion. This you can kind of hear it when I'm talking about the validation and kindness that you turn towards yourself before the just do it part of the just do it that I was suggesting. But this is really about kindly acknowledging where you haven't been doing things. One of the things that can come with the I don't wannas is attending shame sometimes. Like, I don't wanna, but then you feel gross, bad, self-deprecating about the lack of doing it. Which, because human brains are fun, then makes you more likely to continue to not do it. Yay! How shame works exactly the inverse of how we expect or want it to. Yay! Anyway, so what actually works to help you do the thing that you feel bad about not doing is to be kind to yourself about not having done it. So, as much of the shame or guilt or any other uncomfortable emotions that you're aiming at yourself about this, as much as that you can let go of and recognize, you know what, it's a universal experience. Everybody goes through this kind of difficulty. I can be kind to myself and reapproach this idea. You're much, much more likely to reapproach that idea than if you're giving yourself shit about it. So, in short, radically accept that you don't want to do it anyway, but be kind to yourself about why you stopped. There you go. There's some summary of my 3 things all strung together.
Nice. Well, I like that you named that you're kind of recognizing that maybe who you're really speaking to is...
Yeah. A specific population of DBT users, not all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like the people out there where it's just kind of like, no, if you are not using your DBT skills, like
it's impactful to your life.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, exactly. It's impactful to your relationships or your well-being or, that sort of thing.
Yep, exactly. And I think for me, I actually was kind of thinking of addressing more the people who, again, I don't want to say like don't need DBT because
come on, you're with me.
We do all need this stuff.
Yeah, all right, need. But if you're being particular about the word need, then it works. Could use.
Yeah, right, exactly. The people who could use DBT. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But again, whether you're using skills all the time or whether you're using skills rarely, hopefully are in a decently stable place with their mental health. And might find, more benefits whether using DBT, but things are not like falling apart in their lives if they're not using skills as often. Because what I think can happen sometimes is that, when you're in a DBT program, I know there are some DBT programs that like don't use diary cards at all.
What?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there are definitely, I've encountered a few people who are like, yeah, we don't do diary cards. I'm like, all right, cool.
And I thought I bent the rules of DBT.
Yeah. But then I know a lot of DBT programs where like half of the group is spent talking about diary cards. Like it is very, very, very important that you do your diary card. So it can run the gamut there. But like, whether it's diary cards or whether it's just, no matter what, every DBT group has the expectation that you are going to use your skills outside of group. That's just a thing that is pretty hammered in from day one. That there can almost be like this sense of obligation that can come up, I think, really early in a DBT experience for a lot of people where they're like, well, I have to do my diary card. I have to be making sure that I practice this skill, right? Like it can feel very much like when you were in school and homework and like you have to do it whether you want to or not. And sometimes people continue that even when they're not in a group anymore because they're like, well, I'm supposed to. And like Kate was talking about, there could be some downsides to if you start to let things slip for yourself. And you might need to just do it with making sure you're consistently using DBT. But there may be a point where it's like, look, if you've been doing diary cards every day for a year and you've just reached a point where you're like, I'm over it. I don't want to do another diary card, right? Like what I would say that you could play around with and see what happens. Cut down on how much you are doing these things. Like cut it down by like half or make the decision to do, I don't know, something maybe once a week or whatever it is. Like dial back how much you're doing it and see if that helps a little bit. Like, still be keeping it there. Don't just stop cold turkey, but dial it back a little bit. I think, actually, speaking of talking about quitting cold turkey, I was kind of imagining this a little bit. Like, if you think about somebody who is an addict and they're going to meetings, right? A lot of people, when they are in like brand new sobriety, they're going to a meeting like every day because that's what they need at that time to really get the momentum going with being sober. But then maybe, after you have, say, 10 years of sobriety under your belt, most people with that much sobriety are not going to daily 12-step meetings anymore. They may still be going, but they're not going every day, right? They may go once a week. They may go once a month. They may, they adjust the dose, you could say, over time of how much you need something at any given point, just with where you're at in the journey and how long you've been doing it. If you have been kind of forcing yourself to like do DBT all the time for a long time, you can maybe loosen the reins a little bit and you still may be okay. So I would recommend starting there. Another thing you can consider is like, maybe not, but maybe you have a favorite DBT skill. Kate, it is no shocker. Kate loves self-soothing. We all know it. Me, I like improve. That's probably one that I'd like. I also like the short-term A from ABC with accumulating positive emotions. Maybe some people like half smile and willing hands. I had a client I was recently working with who said that was her favorite DBT skill. Hopefully you have kind of a warm and fuzzy DBT skill that you like, that sparks some amount of joy when you think about using it. Maybe you just do that skill for a while. Like, let go of trying to get yourself to do the skills that you're like, I can't stand this skill, right? Like for you, Kate, it might be effective rethinking and paired relaxation. Yes. I know you don't like that one. Okay, forget that skill for a while.
Progressive muscle relaxation.
Yeah. Forget that one, right? Do one you like. And maybe that might bring a little bit of your joy back to DBT. So you might be in that boat, right? Where like, okay, you are doing things, you're doing DBT all the time, but again, you just don't want it anymore. You also may find yourself in the boat where you're not really using DBT at all. But when you think about using it, you're like, no. I actually don't think I want to start, right? I don't want to start doing a diary card. I don't want to start practicing, my mindfulness daily. I don't want to start doing any of that stuff. I know I probably should, right? To use the dreaded should word. And it's probably good for me, but I don't really want to do it. You were kind of touching on this a little bit, Kate, in a way that I think is probably pretty universally true, right? Like, what's the emotion there?
Yeah.
Right? Could there be some shame? Could there be some fear of something? Right? Like, what is blocking you from like wanting to get back or just start in general with using DBT? Where is the willfulness coming from? Again, I think willfulness can have very different flavors. If it's like, I've been doing this forever and I'm just feeling kind of done with it versus I'm not doing it and I really don't know if I want to actually start. But that could be a good thing to talk through in therapy if you are in therapy, or just spend like some time sitting with and wondering about. And whatever answer you come to, yeah, I love that you were talking about self-compassion because I really think that that's the place to go to with that of just like, all right, where am I at? And wherever I'm at, I have a reason for why I'm there. So yeah, not beating yourself up and getting really hard on yourself, just kind of really normalizing it for yourself. That again, willfulness is so common, so common. And I think it is really common with thinking about using DBT that you're going to experience willfulness from time to time. So just be kind to yourself when it comes up. That's what I would say.
All right, on to challenge number 3. And of the ones here, this is probably the one that's closest to still being a problem for me. I'm getting better, but for a long time, I would say, like, especially when you and I started teaching together, fucking like 10 years ago or whatever the hell it was now. I know. God, I know.
That's about right, probably.
But I definitely was in this camp then. And still can find it sometimes a bit of a struggle with it. So this one says that you can't establish a rhythm with DBT. Right? This is kind of, you just can't, I don't know, get a stable foundation in it, right? You really want to use your skills. You think about them actively or consistently. But you still just can't seem to find a way to really incorporate skill use into your everyday life. So you know DBT, but you're not reaping necessarily much in the way of the benefits of it, if that makes sense. So yeah, this idea of, yep, I know them, I want to use them, I even remember to think about them. But just don't quite cross the threshold then into using them or into using them regularly, right? Like maybe you're thinking about them actively after the fact. And not in the moment or, things like that. So, all right. What to do about it, Michelle?
Yeah, well, it's funny that you said that maybe out of the ones we're talking about today, that this is the one where you feel like you may struggle with it, because I would actually say the same for me if I had to pick one. And not even like necessarily with DBT, but like my therapist encouraged me, I guess it wasn't that long, a couple months ago. She was really encouraging me. She's like, I want you to sit in silent meditation a little bit every day.
My face. Okay, I'm like, ugh.
Like, I was like, I totally could see the value in that. That would be so good for me. Awesome. I'm jazzed about it, right? Want to do it. Think about it all the time. I maybe do it 10% of the time. Like, I can't. Well, I guess I shouldn't say I can't. I just have not established a rhythm with it.
You have yet to figure out how to establish a regular rhythm.
Yep, I want to. And it just seems a bit out of reach. So that was what I was thinking of with this for myself. But things you could do about this issue of, just not really having a routine or a consistent DBT practice of some sort. You guys, if you've been listening, you've heard me talk about it enough. I'm a big fan of the skill of the week strategy. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I will share it briefly here, which is that I like the idea of picking a DBT skill to be like the theme of your week. So it might not be a bad idea to like at the start of your week, i.e. like Saturday or Sunday, to be like, all right, what is my week looking like? What do I have coming up over the next 7 days or so? And what DBT skill could be most helpful for me with what I am facing? And to focus on that skill. If that means you need to refresh your memory on it in some way, like go back and listen to the podcast episode about it, or read a book chapter about it, or whatever you may need to do to be like, okay, yeah, maybe accepts would be helpful, but like, I don't remember what all the letters stand for. Like, do that. It can also be a thing where you just decide to like go in order, right? Where you're like, all right, I'm going to start with mindfulness. I'm going to start with wise mind. Then I'm going to do the what skills. Then I'm going to do the how skills. And just every week you're going through and choosing a different DBT skill. Just like with whatever kind of seems to come next. You could do it that way too. But creating a plan for yourself of what it's going to look like to practice that skill. Again, what it might look like to relearn it in a way, like look at the worksheets for it, really get acquainted with it. That could be a pretty nice rhythm to establish, I think, of just being like, all right, what's my DBT skill of the week? And let me get into it and make sure that I'm setting intentions for how and when I will use it. Kate mentioned this strategy.
I was seeing that. I missed that was in your notes here.
No, I really like, though, that you mentioned it for the first one and now I'm mentioning it here because, I mean, there's similarities, but there's differences too. Like Kate was talking about the idea of when you're just like not thinking about DBT. You're like, DBT? Oh, yeah, I did. I did that group a while ago. I haven't thought about DBT in months. If that's the thing you're struggling with, then having an accountability partner can be really helpful because I think you were speaking about it, Kate, in the sense of like, where can someone be to like poke you and kind of be like, hey, remember, you said you want to do that? Like, I don't know why I'm thinking of opposite action so much today. Example skills coming to mind for me. You said you want to do that opposite action thing.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, oh yeah, bing, opposite action. I forgot, right? That it might have like that kind of flavor with using an accountability partner for the first challenge. With this challenge of like, you're thinking about DBT, you want to use DBT, you're just not doing it. If that's what's going on for you, where an accountability partner can be really helpful here is in the sense of like, yeah, just really making sure that you are celebrating when you use it. Finding somebody who doesn't necessarily need to like remind you to use it, but somebody where you can share your plan with them. To be like, hey, this is, if you are going to do skill of the week, right? This is my skill of the week. This is how I'm planning to use it. Let me check in with you at the end of the week and tell you how it went. And especially if you can't do it, I feel like also too, with the first kind of accountability partner, that could be somebody who like truly does not know anything about DBT.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's another one they could poke you with, right? You said to do something called tip. I don't know what that means, but you said something about tip, right? This could be maybe a better accountability partner if it's somebody who knows DBT ideally or is in therapy or like kind of in the same boat as you and may also be struggling with their own stuff, right? We all have our own things. Like I was just sharing for myself with silent meditation. We all have our things where we're like, I want to be doing this thing more and I'm just not. So could you find somebody where it's, you know, less about you guys reminding each other if you're feeling really lost, but more like, hey, share with me how that thing is going that you've told me that you're going to do and that I may know something about as well, so that we really feel like we are in it together. Like a very like reciprocal accountability partner might be good for this one. So yeah, those are my two ideas. Skill of the week in some fashion and an accountability person to check in with as you're working to establish your rhythm so you can share your victories and maybe have someone to brainstorm with you if you're running into challenges. They might have some ideas to help you out.
I like that. I like someone to celebrate victories with. That's fun. This dog is a menace. My thoughts is funny. I didn't see it while I was writing it, which perhaps makes sense. But as I'm reading my notes again, I'm like, wow, I was just talking to my brain / myself this whole time. It's not always the case, but it was definitely the case today, apparently. I totally did not notice. Anyway, my little ADHD brain. The first thing I thought about for struggling with establishing a rhythm with something is like what dopamine am I getting out of it? And while it might be well and good to maybe you get some dopamine from your skill use, maybe you get some frustration from it, right? Like it's not always inherently gratifying to have practiced a skill. So for those of us whose brains do better with things that are in some fashion inherently gratifying, or close thereto, something with not quite as close to instant gratification as possible, really. What can you do to reward yourself for skill use is one of the things I think about. Either are there physical objects, foods, games to play. I've done this kind of thing with everything, like writing papers and playing games on my computer. Like once I write a page, I can play 10 minutes of my game, right? Like, so you can do it for little tiny pieces of skill use and tiny rewards, or you can do like, if I manage to use a skill every day for a week, I'm gonna do this cool thing for myself at the end of the week, right? Your brains may vary, but setting up some sort of reward system can be a good way to put it in the action category, maybe, if the skill in and of itself isn't enough of a motivator. And the other thing I thought about was trying to pair some skill or skills with something that you do every day already. The probably lowest hanging fruit is to practice mindfulness, end sentence. But, practice mindfulness while you're brushing your teeth. Practice mindfulness of making your coffee. Practice mindfulness of your commute to work. Practice blah, 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 right? But, practicing mindfulness of anything that you do pretty much every day, right? But it could also look like I'm going to practice contributing every time I don't know, who's grocery shopping every day? I don't know, whoever I'm talking about in this make-believe world, apparently, because I didn't think all the way through the example. By the way, the ADHD meds have entirely worn off by now. Which is not also a state you guys have seen me in for a while now. Refocus, Kate. So what can you pair with doing it every day, right? So this can look like, because the skill naturally feels good, makes sense, accompanying that thing, or maybe it doesn't at all. Maybe you're just like, you know what, every morning as my coffee brews, I'm going to practice check the facts about something from the day before, or something that's on my mind right now, or something like that. So it can match the action, or it can just be tied to it because that's convenient. But either way, sometimes attaching something new to an already established routine can feel easier than starting a new routine. Establishing routines is so hard. So sometimes just amending one, making it slightly bigger, especially if it's just something you're doing in your own brain, so it's not literally a different action, is just easier than being like, this whole separate new thing I will add into my life regularly and reliably. Yep, totally. I'm going to stick with it, says my brain. Umpteen millionth time. So those are my two thoughts. One is, how can you reward yourself for your skill use, and the distance between the skill use and the reward. Know yourself for how much distance you can put in there and still have it be effective. And can you pair some skill or skill use with some part of your already extant daily routine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really like the reward one. I could actually see that helping me.
Aha!
That's what I was saying with my silent meditation. So Thank you.
You're welcome. Punch cards for yourself. Anyway, yes.
Okay. The last challenge that we're going to be talking about. I know this has come up on Q&As many times before, where we get listeners writing in with this challenge, which is that you have burned yourself out from doing too much DBT. And what I mean by that is that we get people and they learn about DBT and immediately they're like, this sounds amazing. I am all in. I'm going to do all of the things as quickly as possible. As much as I can get, I want. So they join a group. They get multiple books. They get, all the resources that they can think of.
Flashcards.
They're trying to learn like 3 skills in a week. Like they are just whipping through DBT. And they're kind of the opposite, I guess you could say, the willfulness, right? The willfulness is like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to. Blah, 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 blah. And this is more just like, I feel like I can't get enough. But now I have accumulated way too much DBT in my life very fast. And now I'm just overwhelmed and I'm drowning in it. And I don't know what to do. Like, I want this, but what have I done to myself? It's been too much too fast with learning DBT and the way they've done it. And so, yeah, they're just entirely overwhelmed and completely stuck. So what to do if that has happened to you?
All right. Let's see. So the first thing that I thought about was basically stepping back. I guess I didn't, this isn't in the notes, but it's meant to be, I suppose, implied. But stated explicitly, Kate. So taking a deliberate whoa, like pull back on the reins, chill out a little bit, and spend some time focusing in on skills that are perhaps like the easiest or the most familiar for you for a while. If you've shoved all, fill in the blank here with the number of DBT skills there are, down your own throat in a matter of 2 months, and you're just like, well, that's all the things. Right. But you're like, but you know what? That whole self-soothing thing, that was fun and easy and memorable. Right. So then just do that. Just be like, okay, cool. Do self-soothing for a while. How long? I don't know. Until I feel like doing something else. Right? Until I see another opportunity for DBT and don't go, oh, but which skill, or I don't want to, or, it doesn't, well, not that I don't want to, because that's the, I guess, willfulness, but that's just like drowning. I don't know what to do here. I have too many choices and not enough context. So ones that are, comforting or familiar or easiest. Easiest can look like because you know it best, or just because it's one of the more straightforward ones, like STOP. STOP is my favorite acronym in all of DBT.
Even though the S stands for stop.
Well, no, that's why. It's nesting. It's like those rooms with 2 mirrors. All right, stop. That's
a good question. What would my favorite acronym be? I don't know.
Oh, come on. It has to be. Well, I mean, favorite like the skill most, or like it because it's the best acronym? Because if it's
because it's like the best or most simple acronym. Maybe GIVE.
That's fair. GIVE is close, but it still doesn't cleave to like the actual first letters being like what the sentence starts with, which is the thing. Like stop, because it's stop, take a step back, observe, proceed. It lines up. It's the right fucking letters. Makes me so happy. Anyway,
it's pretty straightforward.
Where have I gone? I've dragged you along my own ADHD brain. Jesus, it's powerful.
We're both getting tired.
Oh, goddess. Anyway, so pick things that are easy, whatever that means to you, and hang out in the shallow end of the pool for a while. There's nothing fucking wrong with that, right? Take a breather, come up for air, let it settle down a little bit, and then reapproach. In some of the ways perhaps that we've been talking about anyway, right? With picking like a skill of the week, like Michelle likes to talk about so much, or other things to make it a slower trickle in, rather than a tsunami. And then just more mindful self-compassion is what I have here. Honestly, Michelle has really good notes for this one, and she got to it first. But I don't know. Again, when I think about with the burnout from doing too much DBT and feeling overwhelmed and things like that, I think that people who are often self-judgmental around not being able to figure it out. Like I've read all the books and done all the things I should. That's my favorite, right? I should know what skill to use right now. I should be practicing them more often. I spent all this money. I should be blah, 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 blah. And so to take some time to be like, this was a lot of information. It makes sense as a human to struggle to integrate that much information in that short of a period of time. Like, how can I be a little bit gentler with myself as I try and take this information in? Right. Again, because you're much more likely to approach it if you're being nice to you about it than if you're being shitty to yourself about it. So stop shoulding all over yourself, and see if you can't take a more compassionate path.
Yeah. Yep. I feel like for the folks struggling with this challenge, I mean, self-compassion is great for all of these, but especially this one. Just go easy on yourself a little bit. Mm-hmm. I love how you put it, Kate, with saying, like, go back to the shallow end of the pool. I like that a lot. And I think that could look a couple different ways, right? Like you were encouraging, it could look like, hey, pick either the easiest skill for you, or pick the skill that, like kind of a favorite skill, right? Or a skill that you feel like, okay, this one I feel really confident. You could approach it a lot of different ways. The way that I was kind of thinking of it, I was like, the shallow end of the pool is mindfulness.
Fair.
And I think sometimes, maybe I've just felt this way when we've led groups. And maybe it's because when we were leading groups, I know now with the group structure that you have going, you are doing mindfulness as its own module.
Though I still have it as night 2 and all the other ones.
Yeah, right? Like it's sprinkled in throughout.
It's everywhere.
But for a long time, we did our DBT groups the way that many people do, where we did not do a separate mindfulness module. We just wove mindfulness into all of them because we're like, it's so important. You need to learn this. And also, I think sometimes people don't come to DBT for mindfulness. They just don't. They come for distress tolerance or they come for emotion regulation. And yeah, there are definitely people who come for their personal effectiveness. But rarely will you find somebody who's like, I'm here for mindfulness and that's what I want, right? It's like mindfulness is like the appetizer before the main course. And so people skip over it in a lot of ways. They're just like, yeah, that's not what I really, really am interested in. But I was about to say, you're not practicing DBT if you're not practicing mindfulness, which is a very bold statement to make and not true necessarily. But you need mindfulness. You need it. It's so important. And it's at the heart of DBT. So that's what I think of as going back to the shallow end of the pool. Is if you are like, oh my God, there's so many skills. I can't remember these acronyms. I don't know what to use when, blah, 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 blah. Let go of all of that for a while and just do mindfulness as much as you can. Just focus on that. And you are absolutely practicing DBT if all you're doing is mindfulness. You're actually practicing DBT very well if you are just cultivating a mindful way of approaching the world. The other thing I was thinking about is that if you have, because again, I just remember, it was a long time ago, but I remember we got a specific question in a Q&A that was basically like, I have bought all of the DBT things I could like possibly buy.
Yeah.
They're like, I have bought like 3 different books and I'm listening to your podcast every day. And like there are DBT flashcards, like there are DBT apps. Like there's a lot of tools out there, which is amazing on the one hand.
And overwhelming.
Exactly. That's the dialectic there, right? Thank goodness there are all those things available. And you're not meant to do all of those things because exactly as you just put it, Kate, it will overwhelm you. It will be too much. So if you've been trying to learn DBT through a bunch of different methods or modalities or what you'd say, through a bunch of different means, pick one. Pick however you learn best. Like for me personally, I learn best by reading. So if let's say you're reading a book and you're listening to our podcast and you're, stop listening to the podcast for a while if reading is your jam. Or again, if you're like, I hate reading, but like I probably should read this DBT manual. No, don't do reading. Like learn through the app. Like there are videos out there that you can learn the skills. Find a thing that works for your learning style and just learn DBT in one way. That's okay. If you get through that and you're finding then you want to do more, okay, then you can add on something else. But don't try to do it all at once. That's when, again, it's going to be way too much. And then the final thing that I'll say is, I don't know, I kind of feel like if I were going through a DBT program, which I never did as like a student, you could say, or a participant, but if I were, I know myself well enough. This would be my thing. This 4th challenge, right? I would be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Let me soak it all in as much as I can. Almost like you're trying to like study for some kind of test. Like, I've just got to learn it all as much as possible to be able to like know all these skills and memorize them and then pull them out whenever I'm supposed to use them. And just like take this really perfectionistic approach to DBT. But I think a lot of this is that if you are struggling with this particular challenge and you've been putting in a lot of hours to learning DBT in a variety of manners and all of that, like, trust that it's in there. You don't have to, like, again, Know what every single acronym stands for perfectly. You don't need to know all that. You don't need to have it be that, again, you're going to like just magically know exactly what skill to apply at what moment. Like, no. But just trust that like you have probably already created a decently solid foundation for yourself of what DBT is and how to use a good amount of the skills. And that probably means even if you're not going to do it perfectly, the next time you're facing a stressful situation, you probably will use some DBT to help yourself get through it. It's there. Like the same way that when you study for a test at a certain point, you just need to like kind of stop studying and trust it's like, okay, I have read through, my notes a gajillion times. I'm actually going to be able to do this when I'm taking the test. Same idea. Like work on trusting yourself that you have consumed a lot of good information and that you'll be able to draw on it in real time when you need to. You're not going to do it perfectly. You're going to make mistakes. And also, like you're setting yourself up pretty well. And so you could take a break from doing all of it at once and just trust what you've already learned because you've learned a lot, more than likely.
Now you're talking to your brain.
Yep, I totally have.
Which is good.
100%.
Yeah. Yep. No, and I love that. I know you're talking about you might not know all the acronyms. And I was thinking, I don't know, how many years were we leading together before we didn't have to sit there and pause and think for the longer ones? Be like, all right, accepts this, like we couldn't just
probably
prattle them
years.
off. Yeah, years.
Honestly, I think I probably went through teaching every module at least 3 times.
At least, yeah, I was thinking about that.
Before I was like, I know what all the letters of approved stand for. Right? Like, I didn't know that for a while. I would be like, I know this one. Ooh, I can't remember these two.
Yeah, I was teaching the skills for years before I could reliably prattle them all off. So, next time you're feeling self-deprecating about not being able to do that, there's so much information in DBT. So, try and have some kindness there for yourself. It took a lot of years before it started to feel like I could somehow, I could teach a cooking class through DBT somehow. Like it's thoroughly in there.
And then real quick before we go, we're just going to do one last reminder about what we talked about at the very beginning of the episode with all the stuff around Magic Mind, that if people are interested in doing that, just so it's fresh, remember that you can use our code at checkout. So 48% off if you want a subscription, 20% off for a one-time purchase with code DBT20. And check out the link in the show notes. Now I'll turn it over to you, Kate.
All right. I think we're on to closing moments.
Yeah, we are.
All right. Everybody cross your fucking fingers. But I think the dog has settled down in a different room. So maybe we get
a peaceful closing moment. We'll see. I know my husband went to bed. He had the TV on for a while that you all might have been able to hear in the background, but he's gone to bed too. So it's probably about as quiet as it's going to get for background noise.
Okay, to the most peaceful closing moment we can have. Okay. Take a second to just get comfortable. Whatever that means or looks like for your body today. Sitting, standing, laying down, walking. Whatever feels good and right to you. And if you're safe and feel comfortable doing so, I invite you to go ahead and close your eyes. As per usual, we're going to start by just noticing our breath. You don't need to breathe any more slowly or any more deeply than you do naturally. This is just about paying attention. Just about tuning in and focusing in on the rhythms and the sensations of the breath and letting them welcome you. into your body and into the present moment. So for tonight's visualization, I'd like you to begin by imagining that you are on a path in the woods at night. There's a moon and there are stars. It's well lit enough that you're not going to trip and fall, but it's not bright about. But just a bit ahead, just around a couple of corners, you can see the glowing lights of a cabin. And you know that's your destination. And you're excited because you know there's something waiting there for you that you need and that you want and that you're looking forward to. So take a moment to pick your way carefully down the rest of the path until you find your way at the door of the cabin. Take a moment here to take a breath, to feel the anticipation in your body, the curiosity and the wondering. And when you're ready, you can open the door. And in front of you, in this cozy, warm, comfortably lit cabin, is a big wooden table. And displayed upon that table, laid out in front of you, are 4 boxes. The boxes, in turn, are labeled with mindfulness, distress tolerance, emotion regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness. Upon seeing the boxes and reading how they're labeled, you realize that's what's waiting for you here. Whatever it is that you need, whether it be a particular skill from that module or the means of overcoming your obstacle to practicing those skills, maybe just the underlying message that whole module has to give you. Whatever it is that you're most needing in this moment is in each of those boxes. And take a moment, step forward to the table, and open up the box labeled mindfulness. And look inside. Whatever appears here in this moment in your mind's eye is correct. Maybe it makes perfect sense. Maybe it's baffling. It's okay if you need time after to think about it more or process what it means. For this moment, do your best to be mindful and accepting. Whatever you see here is what you're supposed to see here. Do your best to approach it without judgment. After you've taken a second to recognize and admire and sit with whatever it was you found in the mindfulness box, go ahead and place the lid back on and move over to the box labeled distress tolerance. Take a moment to center yourself before again you lift the lid and gaze inside. Once more, do your best to approach whatever you find there without judgment. There's nothing right or wrong about it. It's just what you need. Maybe it's a word or an object or a phrase or a color. Again, it's okay if you need time after the meditation to think about it. For now, just try and welcome it with warmth and gratitude and a lack of judgment. Once you've taken a moment to sit with what you found there, go ahead and replace the lid and step down to the box labeled emotion regulation. Take a moment here to take another deep breath, to focus on the box in front of you before you gently remove the lid. What's inside here? Take a moment and just notice. Doing your best, as with the previous 2 boxes, to sit without judgment, to sit in mindful acceptance of whatever meets you when you take that lid off. Whatever is greeting you from inside the box is exactly what was meant to be there, exactly what is needed. Taking a moment to appreciate it, to notice the details of it, and to be grateful for it. You can then replace the lid and move down to the final box labeled interpersonal effectiveness. And one last deep breath here, taking a moment to really focus before you remove the lid to the last box. Again, simply peering inside and noticing with appreciation and warmth and acceptance whatever it is that greets you there. Bringing curiosity instead of judgment. Wonder instead of worry. And when you feel ready, you can replace the lid to that box too. And take a moment to close your eyes and allow the visualization to start to fade while holding clearly in your mind and your memory what was awaiting for you in each of those 4 boxes. Feel free to take time now or later to think about or journal about or ponder what it is that you found in the boxes if their meaning wasn't immediately evident. But for now, you can go ahead and start to come back into your body and into the room around you. You might do some gentle stretches, rotating your wrists and ankles, neck or shoulders if any of that feels good and right in your body. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me Podcast.